Welcome. Tom Collins will begin our service with an invocation.
Hi. My wife Kim and I met Joe and George through the Cowboy Poetry gathering down in Sierra Vista, and Jill asked me to do this poem by Buck Ramsey. Buck Ramsey was a working Texas cowboy who spent most of his adult life in a wheelchair because of an accident with a horse. Ramsey believed that the ghosts of past saddle pards rode with the cowboy, and because of the cowboy's wild, untamed nature, he dubbed the cowboy the savage. He wrote an epic cowboy poem entitled "And As I Rode Out on the Morning." And for George, this is the prelude entitled "Anthem." And in the morning I was riding out through the breaks of that long plain, and leather creaking in the quieting would sound with trot and trot again. I lived in time with horse hoof falling. I listened well and heard the calling the earth my mother bade to me, though I would still ride wild and free. And as I flew out on the morning, before the bird, before the dawn, I was the poem, I was the song. My heart would beat the world a warning. Those horsemen now rode all with me, and we were good, and we were free. We were not told, but ours the knowing we were the native strangers there, among the things the land was growing. To know this gave us more the care, to let the grass keep at its growing and let the streams keep at their flowing. We knew the land would not be ours, that no one has the awful powers to claim the vast and common nesting, to own the life that gave him birth, much less to rape his Mother Earth and ask her for a mother's blessing, and ever live in peace with her, and dying, come to rest with her. Oh, we would ride and we would listen and hear the message on the wind. The grass and morning dew would glisten until the sun would dry and blend the grass to ground and air to skying. We'd know by bird or insect flying, or by their mood or by their song, if time and moon were right or wrong for fitting works and rounds to weather. The critter coats and leaves of trees might flash some signal with a breeze, or wind and sun on flower or feather. We knew our way from dawn to dawn, and far beyond, and far beyond. It was the old ones with me riding out through the fog fall of the dawn, and they would press me to deciding if we were right or we were wrong, for time came, we were punching cattle for men who knew not spur nor saddle, who came with locusts in their purse to scatter loose upon the earth. The savage had not found this prairie till some who hired us came this way to make the grasses pay and pay for some raw greed no wise nor wary regard for grass could satisfy. The old ones wept, and so did I. You remember we'd come jogging to town with jingle in our jeans, and in the wild night we'd be bogging up to our hats in last month's dreams. It would seem the night could barely hold us with all those spirits to embolden us. While horses waiting on three legs, we had drained the night down to the dregs, and just before beyond redemption, we'd gather back to what we were. We'd leave the money left us there and head our horses for the wagon. But in the ruckus, in the whirl, we were the wolves of all the world. The grass was growing scarce for grazing, would soon turn sod or soon turn bare. The money men set to replacing all the good and true in spirit there. We could not say, there was no knowing how ill the future winds were blowing. Some cowboys even shun the ways of cowboys in the trail herd days. But where's the gift not turned for plunder? Forgot that we are what we do and not the stuff that we lay claim to. Oh, I'd dream the spell that we were under. I'd throw in with a cowboy band and go out horseback through the land. So mornings now, I'll go out riding through pastures of my solemn plain, and leather creaking in the quieting will sound with trot and trot again. I'll live in time with horse hoof falling. I'll listen well and hear the calling the earth my mother bids to me, though I'll still ride wild and free. And as I ride out on the morning, before the bird, before the dawn, I'll be this poem, I'll be this song. My heart will beat the world a warning. Those horsemen will ride all with me, and we'll be good, and we'll be free.
The flaming chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. It's a symbol of a faith of living rather than dogma, of loving rather than judgment, and of honoring death, but celebrating each and every day that we have shared together. Please, bring the family forward. Yeah.
So anyone who is at the pulpit today, sorry Tom, you missed this announcement, is welcome to have a draft of the single malt.
Little George communion.
Yeah. Not so much take this my blood, but take this my bank account. So I'll be the first. We light this chalice not only in the hope, but in the faith that its light symbolizes that of my dad, and that light will reflect in all of our eyes.
Dr. George Phares had a waiting room. Well, he had many over his long career all over Arizona as a family physician, but there was one special one. He used to talk about it, the comfort for his patients, the fish tank and the curved walls, no corners, and the bronze sculptures instead of the mounted heads of animals. Some of you may have heard about it. Anyone? I see a few hands. Yep, right in the front row. Some of you may have waited in it. This last week after George died and we sat together in laughter and in tears, preparing for this memorial today, Jill shared that he used to sneak out there and peek at all who were waiting. And over the years, he saw an eclectic group of people with every ailment and from every walk of life sitting in that room. George saw what John Steinbeck described in his novel, Cannery Row. Its inhabitants were, as the man once said, whores, pimps, gamblers, and sons of bitches. Yes, it is that kind of memorial. By which he meant everybody. And the man looked through another peephole And then he might have said, saints and angels and martyrs and holy men. And he would have meant the same thing. Everybody. Living 80 years among us, George saw everybody as they were, both saints and sinners, and he just loved them. Or if you looked at it through another peephole, he saw all of you. He saw you and he loved you. First as a son and a brother, then as a husband and a father, as a grandfather, and yet always as a friend and ever as a healer. And this is why you are here this day. It's why you have gathered as this unique group of people of many different beliefs and faiths and backgrounds, just like those sitting in that waiting room. Remember in words and in music, with our laughter and tears, the love of Dr. George Phares. Felt and shared, offered and given every day that we all were blessed to live with him. I'm the Reverend Matthew Crary, and I'm a guest of Reverend Ron and the Mountain Vista congregation, and I'm honored to be with you here today. Though we gather because of death, we are here to celebrate life. And we will mourn. And yet more than this, we're here to remember and celebrate the love that lives on and on and on and on here among us. It is good to be together. The song Colors of My Life is from the musical Barnum, about the life of one of our Universalist forebearers, the grand entertainer P.T. Barnum. Among all the musicals that he loved, this song was a particular favorite of George. The colors of my life are bountiful and bold, the purple glow of indigo, the gleam of green and gold, and splendor of sunrise, the dazzle of a flame, the glory of a rainbow. I'd put them all in shame. No quiet browns and grays, I'll take my days instead and fill them until they overflow with rose and cherry red. And should this sunlit world grow dark one day, the colors of my life will leave a shining light to show the way. The colors of my life are softer than a breeze, the silver gray of eiderdown, the dapple green of trees, and ember of a wheat field, the hazel of a seed, the crystal of the raindrop are all
all I'll ever see. Your reds are much too bold. In cold I find no words. I'll fill my days with sage and brown, the colors of the earth. And if from by my side my love should roam, the colors of my life will leave a shining light to show the way.
In a moment, we are inviting those of you who would like to share a brief tribute, a brief remembrance, a brief reflection of George. It's an opportunity for us to begin to deepen the many facets that was a man who had many facets. And it's the beginning of our storytelling, because following this service back at Jill and George's home, you are all invited, as it says on the back here, to continue that celebration with food and music, just as George would have wanted us to. And so that's a time to tell longer stories, more in-depth stories, perhaps even stories that are best not told in a church. Yeah, I know some people are thinking, well, I guess I'll wait to the celebration following, won't I? Reverend Stanton Coit once wrote, "To our friends and loved ones we shall give the most worthy honor and tribute if we never say, nor remember that they are dead, but rather that they have lived." In opening up the mic, I was informed that some of George's friends might be long-winded. And I thought, wow, it sounds like Unitarian Universalists. Sounds like me. And so I do want to invite you to come forward and share, but share briefly, so that others can have that opportunity to begin to reflect and deepen our memories together. Please.
I'm sorry, I can't be brief. So, like I knew George for a long time. He may be not that old, but he treated me like his own son. When I met him first time, I was in the hospital, it was a difficult case. So he turned around and asked me for some help. After that, he took care of me. So, not only just for the medical wise, we had some people with certain neck in town. They don't like some foreigners. It's an open church, I can say. But he was the first guy stood for me. If there's an injustice, he'll fight for me. He's always not afraid to stand up for a cause. He's a kind man, he won't hurt anybody, but if somebody is doing something wrong, he won't tolerate. But first of all, it's a little sad for me. At the same time, I'm happy because we say, Jesus lives in all of us. He's with Jesus. He's everywhere. Even now here, he's feeling. I can see feeling, laughing at me, joking with me. So anyway, we're together he was a department of chair for family practice. I was the chief of staff. We were together in MBC. We did a lot of things for the hospital. And also we say he's a very good family man. Mother is like a living God on earth. So mother gives birth, and then if there's a God, it's your mother. He took care of his mother, so nice boy. It gives tears to me because I wish I had some quality time with my mother. She was in India, so I had a great time with his mom too, So whenever I go to his house, every time I go, any problems, He would have a single malt scotch, and then Jill will give me the cashews. We had a good time, we'll solve all the problems in the world. So, and then, he was very kind, and we had a great time together. And then his patience, doesn't matter, like I said, like all the times he described, son of a bitches, and so he didn't show any difference. But he treated everybody equally, really cared for his patients. He's one of the older physicians, never cared for money, but patients' well-being is the first more important thing. And he went to Indiana University. He graduated from there. My daughter went and did her fellowship there. So he was so happy as if his own granddaughter went there. So we had a lot of things in common, So I had a great time with him. I miss him very dearly. But as I said, like we say, we all come from the same consciousness, go back to the same place. It never dies. Like Jesus, never comes, never dies, never lives, right? No beginning, no end. So it's all our imagination that we think we're dying. There's nothing living, there's nothing living. She's always there. So George, I'm happy for you, George. Give me a call sometime, okay? Talk to me. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Others, please.
My name is Carolyn Lee, and I've known George almost 40 years. When I got out of graduate school, I started at Phoenix Baptist, and he was the physician on staff. And the one word I can think about with George, and I will always think about, is authentic. He is the most authentic, real person I think I've ever known. And he would probably say right now that I never found a podium or a single malt that I would pass up, which is probably while I'm standing here. But George was our family physician as well as my parents. My father was a cowboy and a rancher. And George, when he met my father one day, came back and said, "Carolyn, I now have met your parents and your father, and I now understand you can't help yourself." So George, thanks for teaching me to be the type of person I think all of us want to be, and the type of person he was. He reintroduced us back to the Methodist Church when Dennis and I were living in Phoenix. Our son was baptized there. And George and I would have good philosophical questions oftentimes with a single malt. And I thought about him driving down from Prescott today and remembered as we would wax and wane poetically about things that George reminded me of an old saying that talks about your life and says that it's important in our lives to be a lamp, a lifeboat, or a ladder. George, you were all three to me.
Thank you. Others. Yeah.
If my grandpa was here today, he would tell you guys three things. 1, stop crying. 2, where's the scotch? And 3, can I go to bed? I have heard so many stories about the people who are in this room today, and I am so blessed that you are all here to celebrate with us. And thank you, because he would not have wanted it any other way. So stop crying, and thank you, and I'll go to bed, Grandpa, I swan.
Hi, I'm Bev Mom, and my husband Al and I knew George and Jill and family from Sierra Vista. He's one of the few physicians that I've ever known that truly enjoyed life. Sometimes some physicians get so caught up in medicine that they don't make time to live their life. George lived his life, and he tried to help others to live their life and to be happy in that process. He always found good in what was going on, but if you tried to do something that was harmful to someone, he's the first one to stand up and say, "Wait a minute, this is wrong." And I think that's quite admirable of anyone in this world. And George was just a terrific person. Jill's a terrific person, and so is the family. We had many good times, and it didn't always have to be something elaborate to have a good time. In fact, another couple was with George and Jill and Al and I think we were in Patagonia. We were waiting to go eat, and we actually ended up in a laundromat, sitting there watching it go around while we were waiting on our food. Didn't that sound dumb? It was more fun than you can imagine.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
See if I can get through this. We had a lot of good times with George, Jill. We were in Ruidoso for a music festival. Went to a nice restaurant that night. George had to get up to go to the bathroom. He said, "Order a nice bottle of wine." So we decided which one to buy. George came back, finished the bottle. He says, "Let's have another one of those." I think he was picking up the tab that night. It was $80 a bottle. And so it was a little shock to the system. Anyway, to keep it short, George told me once, he said, "If it serves no useful purpose, don't say it." My wife reminds me of that every day.
Thank you. Others? Please.
I'm Lori. I'm the wife of that man who got that awesome advice. We spent at least one summer up in Greer with George and Jill, and a lot of time for a couple of years that we went up there frequently. And George and I were good wine drinking partners, I have to tell you. But I remember it was my birthday, and we were going to celebrate, but and everybody knows Jill's ability to cook. But for some reason, we didn't have a birthday cake that night. But George and I settled for Twinkies because they were the best birthday cake. So just a few little memories. I just can't tell you how much he meant to us. And digging out the basement in Greer, we got involved in that. And so a lot of fun memories. And I met George and Jill when I was doing home health care, and I was taking care of his mom, Betty. And I'm going to tell a little story on Jill because, and then I'll be done. When I first met them, I went into their home, and it's a very nice home in Sierra Vista. And I knew that George was a doctor, and I knew him. And I'll never forget the day that I went there, and here's Jill on her hands and knees scrubbing the floor. And I thought, boy, what a doctor's wife she is. She's the most genuine doctor's wife that I have ever met. So, Jill, we love you. Call us when you need us.
Thank you. Others?
Hi, I'm Kathy Kuzmanoff. I'm a member here at the Unitarian Church. And I think I might speak for a fair number of us. We didn't get to know George very well. He'd come to church, and he's a fairly quiet presence. The times I had with him were very warm. He came to my Easter parties at my home, and was a simple, quiet enjoyment. That's how we knew him here. And in January, when I gave a little talk here, he reached out to me and told me what he thought of it, that it was a good talk. And it was those little things that, make an impression on a person, that he
he had this warmth about him. He came to the parties and he gave the compliments. I think those are good things to say about someone.
Others.
I'm just coming up for the mall.
Okay.
Holy crap. Excuse me. I'm George's younger brother, Joe. I didn't realize till I heard all you people talking that he's the good brother. There's his older brother, Jack. I mean, look at him. George was an unbelievable brother and a good friend, and I miss him. Excuse me. Not too long ago, we went on what we called the geriatric cruise. And George was 80, Jack was, well, older, and I was 62. But that made me the crew on my own boat. But we went over to Catalina, and we spent 5 days, I think, over there. And the entire way over, George was sick. And when we got there, I said, "Do you want to go ashore?" "I'm having a great time." And it's just the way he was. Anytime you needed anything, he was always there. He was a good brother.
Thank you. Others, please.
I hope I can talk. My name is Sharon, and I first met George and Jill and Ron in Phoenix. We live in the same neighborhood. I'd like to pass on my two daughters, Allison and Susan, couldn't be here tonight, but I'd like to pass along a memory, we have so many, of what Susan asked me to relay, and her favorite memory, and there's so many, of George being kind and funny and good to all of us, as he was to anyone, and so non-judgmental. Susan was going to be married in a day or two, and her heart rate spiked, and her fever. In a panic, I called and asked George his opinion. He came over and reassured Susan that if her heart rate weren't high, she shouldn't be getting married. And there are too many to recount, but just Allison sends her love and regrets she couldn't be here. She was, Ron and she were boyfriend and girlfriend in high school. And I guess Ron would miss his swim classes without telling his mother to come and visit us at the house. But I really didn't know about him. And of course, Jill was such an instigator too. When Ron wanted to get Allison bunnies for Easter, and I said no. You remember this, don't you? And Ron went out of town. I think he was visiting his brother in California that Easter. But early Easter morning, the doorbell rang. No one at the door when we went, and there was a basket with a bunny in it for Allison. thanks to George and Jill, which I'll never forgive you for. I'm just so happy to know all of them.
We'll have you take us out of this time, so the last one today.
Now, do I look like I could tile a floor? My name is Ann Herzer, Jill, and well, George was my doctor and he was my friend. And I'm glad to see the cremation of Sam McGee on this, because I think that was the only thing that George could say by heart. He knew that. He introduced me to Robert Service, and I introduced him to many books, because he said to me, Ann, would you make a list of books? He said, I was in medical school and I didn't have time to study anything. So he introduced me to Robert Service, and I made a list of books. And I hope he read them. But one time, I loved to go to Greer. Loved that place. And I would do anything to go to Greer. And so George, I said, George, would you loan me your cabin? And I borrowed the Hall's cabin for years. I'd do anything to get up there with my kids and get all this heat. So George said, well, I will, Ann, if you'll tile my kitchen floor. And I said, George, I don't even know how to hold a hammer. Oh, he said, it's easy. He said, all you have to do is just, he said, I've got all the stuff there and all the directions, and you can tile it. Well, I'll tell you, I tiled it. And it'll never be the same. I think Jill told me they had it for years and years and years, and she said to me, you mean you're the one that did that mess? So, George, we'll miss you and we love you. Thank you.
Stanton Coit finishes. The dead are not dead if we have loved them truly. In our own lives, we give them immortality. And we've heard so many different facets, overlapping, of course, because you knew George. You knew an authentic man, a man of integrity, of high values, who would stand up for what was right. And the word that came up while we were preparing for today started to drift into people's recollections. A good man. Not just a good man, not just the word that it's somehow superficial, but you've got to say it just right when you're talking about George. He was a good man. He had so many different qualities that he showed us not just who he was, but he showed us who we could be. Dead are not dead if we have loved them truly. For it is in our own lives that we give them immortality.
Someday I will leave this world, my friend. Don't cry, through death life begins again. A promised land awaits, called eternity. And so I bequeath a special gift, a legacy. The gift of life is from God above. Keep me in your heart like a golden memory, For it's my last wish to share the gift, a legacy. Legacy, a gift of love and caring. It's a way of sharing unselfishly. Legacy, a gift of love and caring. It's a way of sharing unselfishly with all humanity. In God's kingdom, one needs only soul. So I give of myself, may you be whole. The gift of life can't be taken to the grave, for it's the most precious gift God ever gave, the legacy. It must be saved. It must be saved.
Thank you. Char? Sky? Ready?
Down a little thing.
I just want to thank Minnie and Cora for some interpretive dance. That's nice. Really nice. Wow. When were we out last together? It's been a while. I'm so glad you're all here. I'm so glad my uncles and cousins, and aunts, friends. I have a few people I want to thank. Specifically this afternoon, what time of day is it? It's evening. I want to thank Matt for meeting with us and helping create this sacred time together. Matt feels like family, and that's kind of how Phares are. You're all feeling like family. Thank you. I'm so appreciative for Robert and Celia, the pianist, and Ronnie David for generously sharing their music with us, connecting us to Dad in a language that Dad loved. I also want to mention how grateful we are for Casa de Luz Hospice for guiding us through this challenging time with such love and patience and grace. And of course, I'm so grateful you're all here. There are some people who couldn't make the journey today. First and foremost, my niece Emma, who's in college, but she's holding Shiva for Dad, and my dad was a really bad Jew, but we're so grateful that Emma.
As a Jew,
He made it. For my mother, Claudine, who sends her love to all of us. For Carol and Kevin Hatch. For the Alexanders and the Model A, unable also to be here today. For Sarah, Chrissy, and Jenny, his nurses, wherever you are in this universe, we miss you. And it's like my little interpretive dance. When I'm gonna cry, I'm just gonna do a little movement. You can join me. Take a breath.
For those who went before him on this caravan of life, my grandparents Betty and Oak Phares, Wilma and Vernon Brown, Aunt Faye and Jack Howard, Larry Rumble and Mike Gaida, Don Herzer, Rusty Carter, and Dick Kane. I wish you were here. I'm a little pissed that you're not doing this job. For Dan Leeds and Pete Castile, who passed recently within the year, may you rest and play in peace. Come, come, whoever you are. Wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you've broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, yet again, come. My dad was a lover of lists. I know a lot of you made a list this morning to get here, get your kids out the door. Remember to put your underwear on. Mine says bank guacamole. So Dad, this list is for you. Dad was a Boy Scout, a son and a brother, a husband, a lover, a father, and a friend, a physician, a healer, a truth-seeking empiricist. That's not imperialist. Empiricist. He was an eclectic collector of crayons and shot glasses and friends from all walks of life, a musical appreciator and mariachi music listener. He went to a Kiss concert, a rainbow gathering, albeit on accident, several modern dance concerts, of which he did not understand. He was such an enthusiastic supporter of those he loved. He loved characters and places and trees, and he would plant one in our yard with your name on it if you did just a little bit of work for him. He especially loved aspens, the smooth white bark, stark in the dark green forest, leaves that shimmered and danced their rustling song. He was an eccentric celebrator of authenticity. He loved stories and poems and facts and maps and Dr. Seuss, Shel Silvers. He was highly disciplined and a complete hedonist. He was a lover of life and wine and scotch and food and Greer and college football, family and friends, cowboy art and poetry. He was a passionate provider of shelter and levity and deep philosophical thinking, and he was very, very, very opinionated. He was generous and open-hearted and tender and very strong. He was a geriatric drinking Boy Scout, a sailor of sorts to Catalina and Avalon Room. He was an opportunity creator. He loved innovation and tradition, and especially if he created the tradition and innovation himself. He was a truth-seeking and truth-telling, and if need be, a whistleblower, even at great cost. And while he did not seek confrontation, he was a man committed to his morals, and he lived by them. He found his spiritual home finally in the Unitarian Universalist Church because of its integrity, curiosity, and openness. He was a science, nature, humanist mystic who talked to trees and animals, and he was a listener of rain and laughter and the ocean and the wind. And he said, "I love you every day." And you knew he meant it. You felt it. There are 10 lessons I learned from my dad. Number 1, who should you invite to dinner? You should invite your ex-wife and your children's friends. Invite cowboys and intellectuals, healers and shamans and physicians. Invite lawyers and bohemians. Invite ranchers and rangers, politicians and Franciscans. Storytellers and finders of fact, historians and performance artists. Invite go-go dancers and your minister. Get the party rolling. Get it really rolling. Have a couple drinks, relax, and then go to bed. I can tell a lot of you have been to parties at our house. Where's George? Never, ever run out of food or wine. Keep it flowing. Number 3, make margaritas by reversing the parts of mixed to tequila. Some of you were there. That was a fun, crazy night. Build your dreams. Build your homes. Build careers. Build your practice. Build your family. Seek the truth and live it. Be active. Keep moving. Work hard and play hard. Develop 10 areas of confidence. Yeah. Welcome and never exclude. And linger in the hello. Do not linger in the goodbye. Move forward. And then sing a rainbow. Okay, good. I'm so happy.
So I vow to keep the song going. I am committed to measuring the marigold and singing rainbows. I vow to say grace in a language of gathering and love, acknowledging those in need and remembering us all here today. I will not linger in this goodbye, and I will say I love you every day of my life.
I invite you to a contemplation and a meditation. Doctors know what death is. Doctors know what death is better than anyone else. Morticians only touch one side of the equation, and ministers, well, we share a big picture, but not the embodied intimacy. Doctors know our symptoms. They know our prognosis. They touch our aches and pains, witness our aging and ailments. And when they are good, as George was, they hold our hands through the long, dark night. Ultimately, finally, they are with us as we shift life to death. And George lived this. He lived it for so many. And so, of course, he knew it for himself. Well over a decade, George lived with congestive heart failure. Can you imagine? Imagine for a moment, having cared for others through it, that somehow you know the intimate details of your own body and your own demise. Knowing you and how you are going to die could either paralyze you or it could move you to dig into life and live it. And after hearing only a small slice of the stories from family and from all of you here today, of his adventures, of his journey, of his beliefs, of his living, it's obvious that George chose the latter. George chose to live, spending time with family and friends in grand ways, in parties, trips abroad, football games, and in those quiet, particular ways, like teaching the rainbow song to his grandchildren. He chose to live on his own terms and to die on his own terms. There's a general consensus that his plan all along was to go to the cabin and to work on it furiously until he caused himself a heart attack. Yes, Nodding heads. People know that this was the plan. He wanted to go out quickly, doing what he loved in a place he loved. But as the years went by, George just kept on living. As evidenced in the cabin's improvements. From no running water to a hot tub today. But this last week, when he had the opportunity to go up to the cabin, he changed his plans. He chose to stay at home, to be with family. And as his health rapidly failed, as he rested and waited, his family gathered, and he waited until Greg arrived. He even waited the few extra minutes until one day everyone came back from all those errands that take us everywhere. And then, with the people that he loved, he died, peacefully, naturally, surrounded by family on his own terms. What a great gift. What an amazing gift for us all. Not only the life that he shared with family and friends and even strangers, but to end showing us how to live and to die all on our own terms. Many blessings. Perhaps the only prayer that we know as Unitarian Universalists in common is the song Spirit of Life. If you know it, please just join me. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Amen.
Well, again, thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to try to read the cremation of Sam McGee. Dad had it memorized, as you heard earlier. I practically have it memorized from hearing him recite it so many times. It was his go-to poem at a campfire, little tradition he brought from the Boy Scouts to have a little performance competition, and he was kind of a closet performer. And when he would do this one, he really gave it a lot of life. I think he liked it for a lot of reasons. It talks about the character of some of those men who went to the Yukon that had shared a lot of characters with the cowboys. It had a creepy part in the middle that was fun to give little kids nightmares. And it kind of has a happy ending. So let's see if I can do this. I got it. All right. You might want to kind of, it's usually best in the dark, so you might want to kind of just shut your eyes a little bit and imagine that the chalice here is a roaring campfire. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The Northern Lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was the night on the marge of Lake LaBarge I cremated Sam McGee.
Now Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the South